Hi, it's GeekWire co-founder Todd Bishop here sharing something just a little bit different. My colleague and fellow co-founder John Cook and I have been talking for a while about taking a new approach to writing columns using artificial intelligence. And the idea is to sit down, the two of us, and discuss a topic casually and really speak with the purpose of informing an AI chatbot to take what we talk about and turn it into a column. So we tried that this week with a piece and just wanted to share the raw audio with you here. It's a little bit rough. You'll hear some salty language and some things that we did not end up including in the final column, but we ended up turning this audio over to a few different chatbots. And if you go to the link in the show notes, you can see essentially what this turned into on GeekWire. So here it is, our very raw conversation about the checkered history of Seattle hardware and startups and all the struggles they've had over the years tied to a couple of recent news events. Okay, so the stories that we're focusing on today are the restructuring of Glowforge, and we'll provide this to the AI, the restructuring of Glowforge and the potential closure of rad power bikes. And the common thread that these two have is that they're consumer-oriented hardware companies based in Seattle that have seen different degrees of success. You know, rad. It's like it's kind of like the Tesla of e-bikes. But I got one word for you to start this out, John. Zune.
Zune. Zune was the beginning of the hardware failures that
I don't know if it was the beginning.
Seattle has experienced.
I don't know if it was the beginning, but it certainly is emblematic of the struggles. And I got another one for you. Fire phone.
Fire phone. Well, I've got one that's outside of the realm of technology, really, but it does speak to consumer products that are hardware or physical products, at least, that also was a massive blow up. And I think you remember the football helmet maker, Visus.
Yes. Visus.
So I think the common thread here is that, well, a few, and you hear this often, that hardware is hard. Hardware is hard. It's hard to do. It involves supply chains. It involves building something physical versus software. And I think maybe it's just naturally harder to build businesses that are consumer-facing hardware products.
In general.
I
think that's true. Yeah, you've got
more capital.
Longer development times.
Yes.
You can't just change a piece of code and have it work.
Yeah. I guess with the Tesla now you can push code out to the car and it fixes things, but
it's still fixing
probably not doing that on the rad power bikes.
But it's fixing the digits, not the atoms. You know, and when you push out an update, you're not going to fix a broken, hardware component in a Tesla with a software update. Obviously,
yeah. New tire needs to be a new tire. Yeah.
Now, do you think it's harder in Seattle?
Maybe. I don't think there's as much of that hardware DNA in the Pacific Northwest. So that's maybe a component of it. But I think it's just generally harder. Okay. The other common thing that has really struck me about these, more recently, these two stories in Glowforge, which essentially went into receivership, and Dan Shapiro and some other founders of the company came back out and have purchased the assets and are trying to restart it in a much more streamlined, bootstrappy type of way. And then Rad Power Bikes, which had this announcement in the last week where they said they might have to close and lay off. I mean, as you said, I mean, it's kind of was the Tesla e-bikes. One common piece of DNA here that's struck me is that these were companies that were kind of born in the pandemic times. When you think about this, Glowforge was this idea that, everyone, now that they're sitting at home in their PJs, afraid to go outside, what are you going to do for fun? You're going to sit in there and you're going to have a 3D printer creating all these little trinkets and gadgets and things that you want. And so the promise was that you were going to do this during COVID. e-bikes also grew up in this COVID period, right? They really came. It was like you're going to be out on your e-bike riding around because there's really nothing else to do. And so both of these companies, and I think this is symbolic of what was happening at the time. There was so much money being thrust into uh, startups and companies at this time to really grow based on COVID models, and you saw this with a lot of tech companies. I mean, this is why Amazon and Microsoft, or Zoom is a great example. They all scaled up because behaviors have now radically changed and have permanently changed, that we're no longer going to have in-person meetings. We're just going to use Zoom. Our business, physical events. Remember how many webinars and actual companies that were set up to run virtual events. Like virtual events, you might as well forget about the idea of renting out the Hyatt Regency in downtown Seattle, because now everyone's just going to meet virtually and have little virtual rooms.
That was the idea.
That was the idea. It really hasn't come to fruition. And so my thought,
well, it came to fruition, but it went away.
It came to fruition, but it went away, and we went back.
It wasn't persistent and enduring.
Yeah, and we've gone now back to this era. And so part of what I think is going on with some of these companies like Rad and Glowforge is that they were built in this other time that kind of had this weird economic dynamic going on because of COVID, and they scaled up thinking that behaviors had radically changed, when in fact they just kind of went away.
Now, one technicality, Rad, I mean, they both were born well before the pandemic. So Rad was in 2007. And Glowforge was 2014.
But scaling and growing.
They really saw the pandemic was their moment.
Yes.
For both of them.
Yes.
Yeah. So where does this leave? Where does this leave us? What would be the conclusion or the takeaway that you would want? Is it, should Seattle just stick to, enterprise software, the, CRMs and the cloud platforms of the world?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you think you still have to experiment and try some of these things, and I think there are other specific flaws, I think, with each of these companies that maybe we can get into in terms of just changing behavior or.
The canonical example of that in Seattle is, do you know what I'm going to say?
No.
Change hardware that sought to change behavior. Human headphones.
Oh, well, that's really going into the vault. That's really going into the vault. They
look like something that you would have on Star Trek.
Yeah, it's actually another example of what we're talking about. Hardware being hard. Just
they imploded.
Yeah. It
was right around the Vice's time too.
Yeah. I don't know. Think about what are the hardware devices that you really love using in your life. You use a lot. What's your note-taking device?
Yeah, remarkable.
Yeah.
Well, maybe one exception in this regard is the Kindle.
Yeah.
The Amazon Kindle.
Mm-hmm.
And what's the difference?
Big company. Although
big company and directly related to its core business, in that books were the first, it's a direct offshoot of its core business, in that books were essentially Amazon's first business, and innovative too, like really defining the category. I know there were e-ink readers before that, but Amazon really defined that category. So that is one exception. But then they completely busted with the Fire Phone as they tried to chase other people with features that nobody really cared about. So what is the conclusion? I mean, is it just?
Well, I'm looking back at this April 22 GeekWire story when Rad laid off 100 employees. So that was about 14% of the staff. And the headline was Rad Power Bikes lays off 100 employees, about 14% of staff, after raising $304 million last year. So they raised a ton of money, and then they immediately, and at the time they had a 725 person workforce. So they raised a ton of money, and then pretty rapidly after that started cutting staff. That's, they obviously had some additional problems going on. They said to bring more focus to our online and retail stores and expanding our footprint with additional retail locations this year. And I think this is another problem with maybe Rad, and then I mentioned Visis as well, was Rad had to kind of build out the whole, like what Tesla has done successfully. They kind of had to build out their entire ecosystem. I mean, Tesla's a pretty good comparison here. Like they were trying to build out their own direct to consumer business model with their own retail shops, with their own. Remember, didn't they have like mobile mechanics that would go around? Remember this? Yeah, because if the Rad power bike broke down or something, they had to have a mobile unit. A mobile unit could come and fix your Rad power bike. That's expensive. Like that's building out the entire network, and boy, that is hard to do versus relying on existing bike shops to fix this stuff.
Yeah, Rad Power Bikes mobile service. We offer on-demand e-bike assembly and delivery, maintenance, and test rides in select regions.
Boy, that's a tough business. Just imagine the infrastructure related to that. So you have to have the mechanics trained that can go out and fix bikes.
Rad approved mechanics.
Yeah. Yeah, because is that what it says? Rad approved. Yeah, that is tough. It's not saying it can't be done, because I think you do see this with Tesla. It was done, but this is a bit of an odd thing that they raised so much money, including from some prominent folks, Daryl Cavins and Mark Vadon of Zulily, and had a valuation over $1 billion, and then immediately started cutting staff. Also typically a red flag in these situations, Todd, is when a company like this that has raised this much money loses one of its co-founders. And that also happened in the case of Rad. It also happened in the case of Glowforge, where some of the original folks involved in Glowforge departed. If you're a business journalist looking for signs of a company that's maybe starting to hit the wall, or things aren't going as planned, look for a co-founder that departs before they've had a big exit, or I think it's just a red flag to look for. And in this case, Ty Collins stepped down, what was it? I think in about the same time they raised all that money. So one of the other interesting stories here is when they raised that $304 million, did Ty Collins, and he stepped down that year, how much of his stake did he sell? And who knows, he might have come out looking pretty good in this deal, right? Because if he sold his stake at that $1.5 billion valuation, and now it's going towards a zero valuation, it reminds me of another hardware company. Do you remember way back in the day with Dan Hesse, the former CEO of AT&T Wireless, who came on board to run TerraBeam Networks? Yeah. This is another hardware company that imploded. This became a big fight. I think we were at the PI at the time.
Yes.
And the founder of that company, one of the original founders, and I think there might have just been one, but the founder was a guy by the name of Greg Amadon. And they raised a ton of money. And Greg departed, sold out. Big time Dan Hesse, former CEO of AT&T Wireless, comes in to take over this transformative technology that was going to beam internet signals between buildings using laser beams in dense urban environments. And Greg Amadon sold out, departed. Big time CEO comes in, takes over, raises a bunch of money, cuts staff. Months later, they're cutting staff. Market's not developing, hard to get the product into market. It's very similar. And this is, we're back. Are we back 20 years now? 20. It's more. We might even be 25 years now on this story.
TerraBeam.
Yeah, let's look up TerraBeam. This is where I wish it was easier to find the Seattle PI stories on the.
Just search in perplexity.
Oh, will that pull it up? Here it is. Oh, here's a PI story. TerraBeam agrees to buyout. Oh, look at the byline on this.
Who?
John Cook, 2004. Look at
2004. Terabeam was a Seattle-based startup founded in 1997 by entrepreneur Greg Amadon, focusing on designing and manufacturing free space optical transceivers, a novel technology that delivered high-speed internet access by sending data through beams of invisible light between buildings. At its peak, Terabeam attracted high-profile investors, including SoftBank. That's interesting, SoftBank? And raised over $500 million, building significant buzz around its promise to solve the last-mile broadband for enterprises, especially in dense urban areas like downtown Seattle. Huh.
Yes, I wrote at the time, after setting the stage on this, essentially an asset sale. After they raised over $500 million, they sold for like $56 million. And I recall at the time they tried to position this as a successful exit. And I was like, bullshit. I mean, come on. I didn't get my MBA, but like, you sell for 56 million, you raise 560 million. Yeah. That's a tough one for me to swallow. But I said the promise of Terabeam and its free space optics technology developed much slower than the pundits predicted. Selling high-priced telecom equipment in the middle of a market meltdown proved too difficult. As a result, Terabeam altered its business model 3 times in the past 4 years, finally settling on a high-speed millimeter wave system that uses radio frequencies instead of invisible lasers to transmit data. And I think, I mean, this is another thing that's happened, is that the economy's just turned.
Now?
Yeah, and I'm saying for some of these companies that, you know, which were founded in 2010 to 2017, boy, it's a different looking economy right now than it was, you know, inflation and just how many people have the money to spend on a Glowforge printer, which are in the thousands of dollars, or a Rad Power Bike, which are also in the low thousands of dollars. I mean, it's a discretionary purchase that, in this case of Terabeam, you know, that's a B2B sale. Yeah. And here we're talking more about, and that's one difference. Here we're talking about a consumer product, but a consumer product at a time when eggs and milk are going up in price and causing a squeeze on a lot of families. It's tough for people to get to $1,500 for an e-bike or a laser printer, for that matter. It seems very much like it's discretionary spending. And once you tap out your market, it's there's not a lot of great places to go. And the other component of this, which I've been thinking about, is just the idea of big bets on things. Like Rad Power Bike seems like a decent product and a nice niche product. But when you bring on $300 million in funding in 1 year to do something, you're now altering the business concept to, you're not just a niche e-bike maker anymore. And when Mike Radenbach, who started it, you know, he was a hacker who, I remember he hacked this together in his home in California, and it was a niche business. It grew and grew and grew, and it brought on big, heavy investors. But as soon as you take all that money, you are now trying to be like a Tesla, like a transformative type of company. You're now not just a niche e-bike maker. You're radically trying to become a transportation company. And I remember talking to the Rad Power Bikes guys about this back in the day. It was like, oh no, we're so much more than just an e-bike company. We're transforming how cities are going to operate. And this was the mindset, which I think you had to buy into if you're going to take that much money. But had they taken less money and just stayed a niche, really, really good bike maker and focused just on that, they might have had a different path. Now, they still might have failed because of some of these logistical things we're talking about and the discretionary spending on something like this. But anytime, and the same goes for Glowforge, you raise that amount of money, you can't just be a niche product in 10,000 homes across the United States that love hacking around and being a geek with a laser printer. No, you're changing an industry. You know, you're changing society if you're raising that kind of money. And there are very few companies that do that. Very few. Don't you think? I mean,
Yeah, it's a big risky bet with slim chance of success.
and which is what venture capital is.
But yeah, maybe it's something too about putting something physical out into the world where the stakes seem a little bit higher. You're creating something, tangible that people are holding, not just.
It makes it more high profile.
Yeah.
I definitely agree.
So maybe are we actually, because I'm thinking of some successes in this realm. I mean, Starlink is made here in Redmond.
Yeah.
Obviously that's SpaceX. So it's a little different. It's a little bit coincidental.
So basically anything Elon does, he has the big innovation.
Break drones.
Yeah.
Of course, but not consumer.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's true. There are counterexamples. And we could also come up with a lot of examples of software companies that get the dust,
Hundreds,
thousands.
Yes.
I do think you're right. I think the nature of these products, whether it's Glowforge or Rad, we're sitting here overlooking the Burt Gilman Trail. If we're recording this now and talking, if we wait here another 5 minutes, we're going to see a Rad power bike go by, which speaks to their penetration in the market. I mean, they are ubiquitous.
Yes.
And not just them, but high profile.
They redefined really in many ways. I mean, to me, they kind of popularized the e-bike.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not an e-bike person. In fact, I kind of loathe them.
Yeah, I know.
But in many ways, this whole idea of electric transport, it was accelerated by Rad.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
but I think you're onto something there, that maybe the reason this gets more attention and it surprises people is that it is a consumer product. It is hardware. It's more in your face.
Yes. More visible.
More visible.
Yeah.
Than some B2B software program that goes under.
And people might care about it more because it can be held or ridden.
Yeah.
Or placed on a shelf or on a table.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
what else?
I'd love to see what it does with that.
Yeah.
Have you any other thoughts? I do like the idea of almost even opening with Burke. The idea of us sitting here in our office overlooking the Burt Gilman and.
Yeah. Well, if it wasn't it's not that shitty of a day. I said if it wasn't that shitty a day, we actually probably would see one go by.
Okay.
Yeah, I think those are the high points. Raising too much capital, what does that mean? Hardware's hard.
What would be your headline?
I don't know. Based on this conversation was all over the place, which is part of what we want the AI to help with, is like take our brain dump and turn this into something coherent.
How many words? 600?
Yeah, I was going to say 500 to 800.
Yeah. Something sharp and punchy.
Sharp and punchy. I love that. And
a little bit of humor.
Some humor. The bigger threads are hardware's hard. Raising too much capital can kill you. COVID, building businesses during the COVID era and then not adapting quick enough. Co-founders leaving as a sign of potential problems ahead and turbulent seas.
I like the historical perspective going back to TerraBeam.
TerraBeam was a hardware company that high profile that crashed and burned.
But also the slight distinction we're making here between consumer and enterprise hardware. Mm-hmm. And maybe there's a slightly greater chance of success in the enterprise realm because you do have to get some kind of customer validation in that realm, like from large accounts before you're going to start seeing venture capital.
Mm-hmm.
Versus consumer, where it's like just sort of up to the whims of the masses. Okay, let's see what it does.
Let's do it. Yeah. I mean, how long was that? 20 minutes?
25 minutes.
Perfect.
Hey, thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see if we do this again. Just trying to experiment a little bit here, and hope you appreciated the inside glimpse into our thought process, at least. Let us know what you think. You can email me at todd@geekwire.com. We're thinking about calling this GeekWire Raw if we end up continuing to do this in the podcast in the future. Stay tuned this weekend for a regular episode of the GeekWire podcast.